In the summer of 1518, in the narrow stone streets of Strasbourg, something happened that still refuses to make sense. There were no warning signs, no omens carved into the sky, no recorded disasters to explain what came next. One woman stepped out of her home into the heat of July and began to dance. Not with joy, not with music. She danced as if compelled by something unseen. Her feet struck the cobblestones again and again. Hours passed. She did not stop. By nightfall, her body trembled with exhaustion, but she kept moving. And by the end of the month, hundreds had joined her, dancing themselves into collapse and death. This was not a festival. There were no musicians, no celebration, no reason at all. Men, women, and even children twisted and staggered through the streets, their faces contorted in pain, sweat soaking through their clothes, shoes worn down to nothing. Some screamed for help while their bodies refused to obey. Others wept as they danced. Witnesses said they begged to be restrained, yet when held down, their limbs fought to break free. This was the dancing plague of 1518, one of history's strangest and most disturbing mass events. And more than 500 years later, we still don't fully understand why it happened. The outbreak began quietly. Historical records describe a woman named Frau Trophäa stepping into the street and dancing without pause. At first, neighbors laughed. Some assumed she was drunk. Others believed it was a harmless eccentricity. But when she continued for days without rest, laughter turned to fear. Her feet bled. Her body shook. Still, she could not stop. Within a week, dozens of others joined her. By the end of July, the number had swelled to hundreds. Chroniclers wrote of people collapsing mid-step, their hearts giving out, their bodies unable to withstand the strain. Strasbourg in 1518 was already a city on edge. Famine had stalked the region for years. Crops failed repeatedly. Bread was scarce. Disease lingered constantly in the background. Smallpox, syphilis, and recurring waves of plague. Life was short, brutal, and uncertain. Many believed God was angry. Many believed demons walked among them. In this world, suffering was not an accident. It was a message. So when people began dancing uncontrollably, the city did not see illness. It saw judgment. City authorities, terrified and confused, consulted physicians. The doctors of the time rejected supernatural explanations and instead diagnosed what they called hot blood. They believed the dancers suffered from an excess of heat in the body, causing madness that could only be cured by movement. Their solution was not to stop the dancing, but to encourage it. They ordered wooden stages built in public squares. They hired musicians. They believed that if the afflicted danced it out, they would recover. Instead, people died faster. Accounts describe bodies crumpling under their own weight. Hearts failed. Strokes struck without warning. Some dancers reportedly foamed at the mouth. Others collapsed into unconsciousness and never woke up. The sound of music echoed through the streets as people danced in agony. What was meant to cure them became a death sentence. As the death toll rose, the city reversed course. Stages were torn down, music was banned. The dancers were carried, sometimes dragged, to shrines outside the city, particularly those dedicated to St. Vitus, a figure believed to curse people with uncontrollable movement. The afflicted were fitted with red shoes marked with holy symbols and sprinkled with holy water. Prayers were said over them. Some recovered, many did not. So what actually caused this? One theory points to poisoning. Rye bread, a staple food at the time, was vulnerable to a fungus called ergot. When consumed, ergot can cause violent muscle spasms, hallucinations, and psychotic episodes. Ergot poisoning has been linked to other historical outbreaks of strange behavior, and it can cause sensations that feel like burning or crawling beneath the skin. But there are problems with this explanation. Ergot poisoning typically causes convulsions, not coordinated dancing. It also affects individuals randomly, not entire crowds moving together for weeks. Another explanation lies not in biology, but in the mind. Modern historians and psychologists increasingly believe the dancing plague was a case of mass psychogenic illness, what we might call mass hysteria today. In times of extreme stress, fear, and suffering, the human brain can manifest physical symptoms without a physical cause. The people of Strasbourg lived under crushing pressure, hunger, disease, religious terror, and constant death. They believed strongly in curses and divine punishment. When one person began dancing, others may have subconsciously followed, their minds overriding their bodies. But this was not fake, it was not attention-seeking. The pain was real, the deaths were real, and the dancers were not pretending. Imagine living in a world where every misfortune is seen as divine wrath, where suffering is expected and fear is constant, where you believe that a saint can curse you with endless movement. In such a world, the mind becomes a powerful and dangerous thing. Once the idea took hold, it spread like wildfire, through belief, fear, and expectation. What makes the dancing plague especially disturbing is how helpless everyone was. The dancers could not stop. The doctors could not cure them. The priests could only pray. The authorities made everything worse. It was a perfect storm of ignorance, fear, and desperation. And it wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Similar dancing outbreaks were recorded across Europe for centuries. In the 14th century, thousands reportedly danced along the Rhine River in what was called St. John's Dance. In some cases, dancers leapt into rivers or collapsed from exhaustion. These events followed patterns of famine, disease, and religious panic. The dancing plague of 1518 was not an isolated incident. It was the most extreme example of a recurring human phenomenon. Eventually, as autumn approached, the dancing stopped. As suddenly as it had begun, the compulsion faded. Survivors returned to their lives, traumatized and changed. The dead were buried. The city moved on. No monument was built. No official explanation was ever recorded. The event slipped into history as a footnote, strange, embarrassing, and terrifying. But the silence left behind raises unsettling questions. Could something like this happen again? We like to believe we are more rational now, more scientific, more in control. But mass psychological events still occur. Panic spreads, fear becomes contagious. Bodies respond to stress in ways we do not fully understand. The dancing plague reminds us that under the right conditions, reality itself can fracture. Not through violence or war, but through belief. Those people did not dance because they wanted to. They danced because something inside them broke. And once it broke, it pulled others with it. There was no villain in Strasbourg in 1518. No mastermind, no poisoner proven. Only suffering humans trapped in a system that could not protect them. The true horror of the dancing plague is not that people danced to death. It's that no one knew how to stop it. 500 years later, we still don't. And perhaps that's the most frightening part of all.